If your block feels quieter, it might not be your imagination. In 2025, whole pockets of California are emptying out, with cities seeing double-digit home price drops, rising vacancy signs, and families packing up for cheaper zip codes. Tonight we are counting down the top 15 California cities turning into ghost towns, and I want you to play along. Before we start, drop your guess for which city lands at number 1, and tell me why you think people are leaving. Here is what you will get in this countdown. For each city, I will show a snapshot, population change in recent years, vacancy pressure you can feel on the ground, and how far prices have slipped from their peak. I will also flag where buyers and investors are quietly circling, because every exit creates an entry for someone with a longer time horizon. Quick rule to keep us honest. If you live in one of these places, share what you are seeing in the comments. School enrollment, empty storefronts, or price cuts you are noticing. Stay to the end, because our final pick will surprise you, and the investor signal there is not what you expect. 15. Union City. Union City sits in the heart of the East Bay, nestled between Oakland and San Jose, and for decades it was considered a prime suburban hub for working professionals in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. Families valued its relative affordability compared to cities like Fremont or Palo Alto, and commuters could easily access jobs in Silicon Valley or downtown San Francisco via BART or the region's busy highways. Yet despite these advantages, the city has been at the center of a quiet but unmistakable exodus. Between the year 2018 and 2023, Union City saw its population fall by more than 12%. That is not a small dip, but rather one of the most significant declines in the region, leaving an undeniable imprint on the local housing market and community life. The reasons for this downturn are layered. At the most basic level, Union City, like much of the Bay Area, became caught up in spiraling housing costs. Median home prices soared into the $700,000 to $1 million range, far out of reach for many middle-class families. Rents climbed to levels where young professionals and growing households began questioning whether the lifestyle was worth the financial burden. When remote work became more widespread during and after the pandemic, many no longer felt tied to the Bay Area's expensive housing market. They realized that for the same monthly cost of a cramped Union City apartment, they could purchase a larger home with a yard in places like Sacramento, Reno, or even further out of state. High costs were only part of the story. Union City, though suburban, is not immune to the broader challenges of the Bay Area, including long commutes, congestion, and rising local taxes. For many, the value proposition shifted. 14. California City. California City is perhaps one of the most striking examples of unrealized ambition in the state's housing history. Located in the Mojave Desert of Kern County, it was originally planned in the 1950s as a master-planned metropolis designed to rival Los Angeles. Developers carved out wide boulevards, plotted endless residential lots, and built an infrastructure that could support hundreds of thousands of residents. But the grand vision never fully materialized. Today, California City is home to fewer than 15,000 people, despite having been mapped out for many times that number. That mismatch has left behind a surreal landscape of paved streets to nowhere and neighborhoods that are only partially filled. The city's decline accelerated recently, with one of the steepest population drops in the entire state. In just a single year, California City saw an 11.8% decrease in residents. One of the major catalysts was the closure of a nearby correctional facility, which provided more than 1,000 jobs tied directly or indirectly to the community. When the prison shut down, a large portion of the local workforce vanished almost overnight. Without new industries to replace that economic base, many families had no choice but to relocate in search of stable employment. The exodus is visible in rising vacancy rates, boarded-up businesses, and entire sections of town that appear deserted. For those who remain, challenges are everywhere. Schools face declining enrollments, leading to cuts in funding and extracurricular programs. Local businesses struggle with fewer customers, reducing the tax base further. City services such as policing, road maintenance, and public works are harder to sustain when the population shrinks at this pace. As amenities decline, it feeds back into the cycle of departure, as residents see fewer reasons to stay and new arrivals hesitate to commit. Yet paradoxically, California City's weaknesses also represent potential opportunities for buyers and investors with a long-term vision. Real estate prices in the area are among the lowest in the state, with parcels of land and modest homes often selling for a fraction of what they would cost elsewhere in California. For less than the price of a small condo in Los Angeles, one could acquire a sizable property here. Some speculative investors see this as a potential ground floor moment, betting that eventual growth in logistics, renewable energy, or desert recreation could breathe life into the city. Still, the risks are real. California City is emblematic of what happens when ambitious planning outpaces actual demand. With an 11.8% population decline in a single year, an entire district sitting largely empty, it illustrates the harsh reality of a housing crash, where supply vastly outweighs demand. In 2025, California City stands as both a cautionary tale and a potential bargain bin for bold investors willing to take on significant risk. 13. Susanville, tucked away in the remote reaches of Lassen County in Northern California, is a city that tells a sobering story about what happens when a community's economic foundation disappears. For decades, this small town relied heavily on correctional facilities as its main employers. In fact, nearly half of all jobs in the city were directly tied to the state prison system. When California began closing facilities in recent years, Susanville was hit harder than almost anywhere else in the state. More than 1,000 prison-related jobs evaporated, and with them went the stability of the city's economic lifeline. The effect has been dramatic. Once home to a modest but steady population, Susanville has been described as long shrinking as families tied to those prison jobs pack up and leave. Businesses that once thrived on serving prison staff and their families now struggle with fewer customers. Restaurants, shops, and service providers face declining revenues, and vacant storefronts are becoming an increasingly common sight along the city's main streets. What was once a tight-knit community has started to resemble a hollow shell, where empty homes and shuttered businesses speak louder than words about the scale of decline. Schools and public services have also been caught in the spiral. With fewer residents, enrollment in local schools has dropped, forcing the district to cut programs and consolidate resources. Tax revenues have fallen, leaving less funding for infrastructure, maintenance, and essential services. For residents who remain, the loss of quality and public amenities adds to the reasons to consider leaving. 12. Corona. Corona, located in Riverside County and often referred to as the gateway to the Inland Empire, has long been seen as a desirable suburb for families priced out of Orange County or Los Angeles. With its planned communities, access to freeways, and relatively more affordable homes, it attracted thousands of new residents during the pandemic. People working remotely saw it as an opportunity to get larger homes with more space while still remaining within reach of the Southern California job markets. From 2020 to 2021, Corona saw a surge of buyers driving prices up rapidly and filling new developments. But the city's fortunes have shifted dramatically in just a few years. Between 2018 and 2023, Corona experienced a population decline of nearly 5%. This reversal is striking because it came so quickly after the pandemic boom. Many of the families who had moved in for larger homes and suburban amenities found that the trade-offs were significant. Long commutes became a burden again once offices called employees back, and the city's distance from job hubs became a drawback rather than a perk. For others, the rising cost of living, combined with higher mortgage interest rates, pushed them out of the market entirely. Vacancy rates in Corona have risen as a result, especially in newer housing tracts where demand was once fierce. Homes that would have sparked bidding wars in 2020 are now sitting on the market for weeks or even months. Sellers have had to adjust expectations, and some have cut asking prices significantly to attract buyers. Investors who bought multiple homes during the boom, hoping to flip them quickly or rent them out at premium rates, are now facing the reality of slower demand and softer rental markets. The slowdown is not just about housing. Local businesses that thrived when new families flooded in are now seeing fewer customers, and retail developments are struggling to maintain full occupancy. 11. Concord. Concord, located in California's East Bay region, was once considered an affordable alternative to its pricier neighbors such as Walnut Creek and Oakland. Families were drawn to its suburban feel, relatively larger homes, and direct access to Bay Area employment centers via BART and major freeways. For many middle-class households, Concord represented the dream of owning a home within reach of San Francisco without the million-dollar price tags. Yet in recent years, the city has joined the list of communities experiencing a steady decline, and its housing market now reflects the pressures of a changing population. Between 2018 and 2023, Concord's population declined by about 5.5%. While that may sound modest compared to sharper losses elsewhere, the impact is significant in a mid-sized city where stability has long been a selling point. Much of this decline stems from families deciding that the cost of living in the Bay Area is simply unsustainable. Even though Concord was seen as more affordable, home prices still hover around $600,000 or more, and rents continue to rise. For many, it has become a case of diminishing returns. The city is neither cheap enough to justify the commute nor close enough to high-paying job centers to make the expense worthwhile. Remote work added a new layer to this dynamic. During the pandemic, some families moved into Concord, believing they could enjoy larger spaces without being tethered to the office. But as companies began calling workers back, the long commute times re-emerged as a deal-breaker. The trade-off between affordability and accessibility no longer made sense, and many chose to relocate entirely, often to states like Nevada, Arizona, or Texas, where housing costs are substantially lower. This shift has translated into a noticeable rise in housing vacancies. Properties that once attracted eager buyers now linger on the market, forcing sellers to adjust expectations and reduce prices. 10. Compton. Compton, long known as one of Los Angeles County's most historic and culturally influential cities, has been facing an exodus that is transforming parts of it into a shadow of its former self. Once home to close to 100,000 residents, Compton has lost nearly 7 to 8% of its population since 2020. For a community already battling decades of economic hardship, that decline is not just a statistic but a turning point that is leaving streets quieter, homes empty, and opportunities thinner. The causes of Compton's population drop are rooted in a combination of rising costs and lingering social challenges. Despite its reputation as a historically affordable place within Los Angeles County, Compton has not been spared from the state's broader housing crisis. Median home prices now hover in the $500,000 range, and rents have risen steeply, pushing many longtime working-class families out. For generations, Compton offered a foothold for newcomers to Los Angeles, but in recent years, those same families have been priced into moving eastward to places like Riverside County or out of California altogether, where housing costs are a fraction of what they are here. Economic opportunity has also played a major role. While the city has worked to attract new development and investment, job growth has not kept pace with the needs of its population. Many residents face long commutes to employment centers in Los Angeles or Orange County. Combined with rising fuel and transportation costs, the equation simply does not add up. For households struggling to balance their budgets, relocation becomes the only viable solution. The result has been an increase in vacancies across Compton's neighborhoods, where once tightly packed streets now feature more empty homes than ever before. Crime and safety perceptions, while improving in some areas, continue to shape decisions about whether to remain. Families who can afford to leave often do so in pursuit of safer neighborhoods and stronger school districts. This migration accelerates the hollowing out of the community, leaving behind a concentration of vulnerable populations and placing further pressure on local services and businesses. 9. Englewood. Englewood, once hailed as one of Los Angeles County's rising stars, has become a paradox in California's housing landscape. On one hand, it has been the site of massive redevelopment projects in recent years, including the construction of SoFi Stadium, home to the Los Angeles Rams and Chargers, and an upcoming NBA arena for the Los Angeles Clippers. These multi-billion-dollar investments were meant to spark a renaissance, drawing jobs, tourism, and long-term residents. Yet behind the gleaming stadium lights and construction cranes, The reality for many Englewood residents is far more sobering. Between 2018 and 2023, Englewood's population declined by nearly 5%. The very projects that were supposed to fuel growth have instead contributed to displacement and vacancies, leaving the city grappling with ghost town-like effects in some neighborhoods. The driving force behind this contradiction lies in affordability. Redevelopment and the promise of new prosperity sent housing costs skyrocketing. Median rents jumped sharply, and single-family homes that once sold for modest prices now cost more than many middle-class families can reasonably afford. Longtime residents, particularly those from working-class backgrounds, have found themselves priced out of the neighborhoods they called home for decades. For many, the only option was to relocate to inland suburbs or leave California altogether. The result is a hollowing out of the community, where shiny new developments mask the growing number of vacant properties left behind by displaced households. Adding to the pressure is the quality of life concern. While Englewood has attracted attention as a sports and entertainment hub, the benefits of this transformation have not been evenly distributed. Many residents complain of increased congestion, noise, and rising taxes tied to redevelopment projects, without seeing proportional improvements in local schools or public services. This imbalance has accelerated the decision for families to move away, contributing to the nearly 5% population drop and leaving a noticeable imprint on the city's housing dynamics. 8. Pasadena. Pasadena, a city best known for the Rose Parade, the Rose Bowl, and its rich cultural heritage, has long been a jewel of the Los Angeles metro area. With its historic neighborhoods, strong educational institutions, and proximity to both downtown Los Angeles and the San Gabriel Mountains, Pasadena has traditionally attracted families, professionals, and retirees alike. Yet beneath the charm of tree-lined streets and famous landmarks, the city has been facing a slow but noticeable decline. Between 2018 and 2023, Pasadena's population dropped by nearly 5%, a figure that signals a growing problem for one of Southern California's most celebrated cities. The driving factor is, once again, affordability. Pasadena has always been more expensive than neighboring communities, but in recent years the gap has widened to the point of unsustainability for many households. Median home prices in the city have climbed well into the 7 figures, making ownership a dream that fewer families can realistically achieve. Renters, too, are struggling. Monthly rent averages in Pasadena are significantly higher than the national average, with many apartments commanding $2,000 to $3,000 or more. As wages fail to keep pace, younger families and professionals are voting with their feet, choosing to leave for cities and states where their dollars stretch further. Quality of life considerations have also played a role in Pasadena's shrinking population. While the city boasts world-class attractions and institutions like Caltech, the affordability crisis has strained diversity and accessibility. Longtime residents are finding themselves priced out of the very neighborhoods they grew up in. At the same time, the influx of high-income earners has not been enough to offset those leaving, leading to vacancies in both rental and ownership housing. Streets that once bustled with activity are quieter, and homes that once would have sparked bidding wars now sit on the market longer, with price cuts becoming increasingly common. The housing slowdown has ripple effects across the city's economy. Local businesses that relied on a steady stream of middle-class families are struggling with fewer customers. Restaurants, shops, and small service providers face shrinking demand. Even the tourism draw of the Rose Parade and other events has not been enough to mask the underlying trend of population decline and increasing vacancies. For investors, Pasadena is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it remains a highly desirable location with strong cultural cachet. On the other, the nearly 5% population loss and softening housing market raise legitimate concerns about demand in the short term. Buyers looking for long-term stability may find opportunity in discounted properties, but they must also contend with the possibility of prolonged vacancy and slower appreciation. In 2025, Pasadena stands as a reminder that even prestigious cities are not immune to the forces of California's housing crash, and its ghost town tendencies are becoming harder to ignore. 7. Glendale. Glendale, set against the Verdugo Mountains in Los Angeles County, has long been regarded as one of Southern California's more stable and desirable suburban cities. Known for its family-friendly neighborhoods, vibrant Armenian community, and shopping destinations like the Americana at Brand, Glendale often attracted professionals and families, seeking a balance between city amenities and suburban comfort. Yet even this strong reputation has not shielded Glendale from the broader forces driving California's housing decline. Over the past several years, Glendale's population has shrunk by approximately 5 to 6%, a significant loss for a community that once prided itself on steady growth and stability. The root cause lies in affordability. Glendale has experienced soaring housing costs that are difficult to sustain for average families. Median home prices are now well above $800,000, and rental rates are among the highest in the Los Angeles metro area. For families with children, the choice has become increasingly difficult. Remain in Glendale and devote the majority of income to housing, or relocate to more affordable suburbs in places like Riverside County or out-of-state markets where homeownership is more attainable. Many have chosen the latter, leading to more vacant apartments and slower turnover in home sales. This outmigration has exposed another issue: the mismatch between wages and living costs. Glendale's proximity to Los Angeles once made it a prime choice for commuters, but as traffic worsened and gas prices climbed, the trade-off has become less appealing. At the same time, remote work gave people the freedom to reconsider where they lived. Families who could telecommute realized they no longer needed to pay Glendale's high housing premium for the sake of location. The 5 to 6% population decline reflects this recalibration as more households move toward affordability over prestige. Vacancies are becoming increasingly visible in Glendale's apartment complexes and rental markets. Landlords are finding it harder to fill units without offering concessions, a stark contrast to just a few years ago when renters competed fiercely for limited supply. Home sellers are also cutting prices or watching their properties sit longer on the market. These changes reveal a softening demand that would have been unthinkable a decade ago in a city as popular as Glendale. For investors, Glendale poses both risk and opportunity. The city's reputation and amenities mean it will likely always retain a baseline level of demand. However, the 5 to 6% population decline and visibly rising vacancies suggest caution in the short term. Those who buy now may find deals not seen in years, but the challenge will be ensuring that demand stabilizes. In 2025, Glendale represents the story of a city that, despite strong cultural and economic foundations, is still being hollowed out by California's affordability crisis and the pressures driving people away. 6. Oakland. Oakland, once hailed as one of California's most dynamic urban centers, is now confronting the darker side of a housing and population decline that has reshaped the city's future. For years, Oakland benefited from spillover growth from San Francisco. Tech workers priced out of the Bay's epicenter flocked across the Bay Bridge, driving up demand for housing and fueling a cultural renaissance. Yet, as of 2025, the tide has reversed. Oakland's population has slid downward, shrinking by nearly 2% since 2020, and its housing market has posted some of the steepest price declines in the entire nation. The numbers tell the story. In just 1 year, home prices in Oakland fell more than 12%, wiping out billions in equity. This decline was sharper than most other California markets, highlighting how fragile demand has become. At the same time, vacancies are climbing, with homes and apartments that once filled quickly now sitting empty. What makes Oakland's ghost town transformation more striking is that this is not simply about affordability. Unlike cities where prices remain out of reach, Oakland's exodus is being fueled by safety and quality of life concerns that push residents to leave despite falling housing costs. Crime and homelessness have become critical issues. Reports of rising break-ins, encampments, and violent crime have eroded confidence in the city. Families interviewed by national media outlets have admitted they are scared to leave their homes and are moving out for their own safety. Entire blocks of small businesses have shuttered, with boarded-up storefronts multiplying in neighborhoods that were once thriving. Downtown Oakland, once envisioned as a hub for economic growth, now struggles with high vacancy rates both in residential towers and commercial spaces. The exodus has ripple effects across every sector. Schools face shrinking enrollments, local revenues have dropped, and city services are strained by reduced budgets combined with greater demand for social programs. Oakland's identity as a creative, resilient city remains, but it is increasingly overshadowed by the reality of empty apartments, unsold homes, and businesses closing their doors. For buyers and investors, Oakland represents one of the most complex cases in California. On one hand, price declines of 12% or more present rare opportunities to purchase property in a major Bay Area city at discounted levels. On the other hand, the exodus of residents and businesses makes any investment a gamble on whether the city can restore stability. By 2025, Oakland exemplifies the ghost town effect born not only of housing costs, but also of safety concerns and a collapsing sense of community confidence. 5. Santa Ana. Santa Ana, the county seat of Orange County, has long been one of Southern California's densest and most vibrant urban centers. Known for its rich Latino culture, historic downtown, and proximity to employment hubs in Irvine and Anaheim, the city has traditionally attracted families seeking both opportunity and community. Yet by 2025, Santa Ana has become one of California's most visible examples of urban flight. Between 2018 and 2023, the city lost approximately 7.4% of its residents. For a city with more than 300,000 people, that amounts to tens of thousands leaving in just a few years, transforming neighborhoods that were once bustling into quieter, emptier places. One of the main reasons for this steep decline is overcrowding combined with rising costs. Santa Ana has long had one of the highest population densities in the state, with multiple families often sharing single housing units. As housing costs across Orange County climbed, many residents who had managed to get by through shared living arrangements could no longer sustain the burden. The median rent in Santa Ana now exceeds $2,500 per month, while home prices often soar beyond $600,000. For working-class families, many of whom make modest incomes in service industries, the financial math no longer worked. The only viable choice was to leave for more affordable inland areas, such as San Bernardino or Riverside counties, or to move out of state entirely. The exodus has had ripple effects on the city's economy. Local businesses, particularly those that catered to families and long-term residents, are struggling with fewer customers. Restaurants that once thrived on the dense local population are now reporting weaker sales, and retail shops in older parts of downtown face declining foot traffic. Public schools have also experienced falling enrollment, a surprising reversal in a city that once struggled to keep up with rapid growth. 4. El Monte. El Monte, a working-class city located in the San Gabriel Valley, just east of Los Angeles, has become one of the hardest-hit communities in California's housing decline. Known historically as the end of the Santa Fe Trail, El Monte grew through the 20th century as an affordable enclave for immigrant families and blue-collar workers who wanted to be close to Los Angeles without the higher price tag of nearby suburbs like Arcadia or Alhambra. But by 2025, the city is experiencing one of the sharpest population drops in the state. Between 2018 and 2023, El Monte lost nearly 8% of its residents, a staggering figure that has reshaped its housing market and left whole neighborhoods in a quieter, emptier state. The reasons behind this exodus are tied to both economic pressures and limited opportunities. For decades, El Monte offered affordability compared to other parts of Los Angeles County. Yet as housing costs surged statewide, even El Monte became unattainable for many of the families it once served. Median home prices have soared past $500,000, while rents climbed rapidly beyond the reach of many working-class households. At the same time, job opportunities in the area have not kept pace. With few large employers nearby, residents often face long commutes into other parts of Los Angeles, a burden that has grown as fuel and transportation costs have risen. For many families, the financial and lifestyle equation no longer made sense, leading them to pack up and move to more affordable inland counties or out of state entirely. This departure has created visible ripple effects. Vacant apartments and homes have become increasingly common in El Monte, especially in areas that were once filled with multi-generational families. Local businesses that depended on consistent neighborhood foot traffic now face thinner margins and in some cases have been forced to close. Schools, once overflowing with students, are now struggling with declining enrollment and shrinking budgets. The city's tax revenues have also taken a hit, making it harder to fund public services and infrastructure improvements. These shifts have contributed to a sense of stagnation, where the community feels less vibrant and more fragile than in years past. For investors and buyers, El Monte presents a double-edged sword. On one hand, property values have softened, offering entry points into Los Angeles County real estate at a discount compared to wealthier neighboring cities. 3. San Jose. San Jose, the largest city in Northern California and the heart of Silicon Valley, has long been synonymous with innovation and wealth. For decades, it has attracted some of the brightest minds in the world, serving as the headquarters for tech giants and thousands of startups. Yet, by 2025, San Jose is grappling with a reality that would have seemed unthinkable just a decade earlier. It is losing residents, and its housing market is softening dramatically. Between 2018 and 2023, San Jose's population fell by nearly 5%, marking one of the most significant declines among large American cities. The reasons for this downturn are deeply tied to the shifting dynamics of the tech industry. During the pandemic, remote work became widespread, and many employees realized they no longer had to live in one of the most expensive housing markets in the country to keep their jobs. Cities in Texas, Colorado, and even neighboring Nevada began attracting tech workers with lower costs and comparable quality of life. As a result, neighborhoods in San Jose that once had waiting lists for rentals or fierce bidding wars for homes are now seeing properties sit longer, with fewer buyers willing to pay the premium that once defined Silicon Valley living. The housing market reflects this trend clearly. Typical home values in San Jose have dropped more than 12% in the past year alone. For homeowners, that decline represents a massive erosion of equity in a city where million-dollar homes were once considered the norm. For investors, it signals caution. Demand is no longer guaranteed, and a shrinking population combined with high vacancies could mean continued downward pressure on prices. The very market that was once bulletproof is now vulnerable, with thousands of units unsold or unoccupied. Adding to the challenge is the high cost of living beyond housing. Utilities, groceries, transportation, and taxes remain among the most expensive in the nation. Families who might have once tolerated these expenses for the sake of job opportunities are now questioning the trade-off, especially with major tech firms cutting jobs or moving operations elsewhere. As incomes stagnate and layoffs rise, the city has been left with fewer people to support its economy. By 2025, San Jose is a case study in how quickly fortunes can change. A nearly 5% population decline, a double-digit drop in housing values, and rising vacancies have created the conditions for ghost town pockets, even in the capital of Silicon Valley. For buyers and investors, it may present opportunities to acquire property at lower costs, but the uncertainty about the city's long-term trajectory remains a powerful deterrent. San Jose, once the epitome of California's promise, now embodies the vulnerabilities of a housing crash in full swing. 2. Los Angeles. Los Angeles, the nation's second-largest city and the crown jewel of Southern California, is experiencing a population decline that underscores the depth of California's housing crisis. Long celebrated for its entertainment industry, cultural diversity, and economic power, Los Angeles has historically drawn millions of people with the promise of opportunity. Yet since 2020, the city has lost more than 3% of its residents, while Los Angeles County as a whole has seen a net loss of more than 56,000 people in just the year 2023 alone. This reversal has left noticeable vacancies in neighborhoods that once seemed perpetually overcrowded. The exodus is fueled by multiple forces converging at once. The most immediate factor is affordability. Median home prices in Los Angeles remain well above $800,000, while average rents hover close to $3,000 per month. For many middle-class families, the cost of living is unsustainable, forcing them to seek out suburban alternatives or leave the state entirely. At the same time, stagnant wage growth has made it difficult for residents to keep pace with rising expenses, eroding the city's ability to retain its population. Another critical factor is quality of life. Los Angeles has long been synonymous with gridlock traffic, But in recent years, safety and homelessness have become pressing concerns. Entire neighborhoods are grappling with sprawling encampments, and residents voice frustration over crime and public disorder. Families who once tolerated the high costs in exchange for access to schools, jobs, and cultural life are increasingly deciding that the trade-off is no longer worth it. The outflow is not limited to any single demographic. Young professionals, families, and retirees alike are choosing to leave. The housing market has shifted noticeably as a result. Where bidding wars once defined the Los Angeles housing scene, inventory levels are now climbing, and more homes sit unsold. Prices in some neighborhoods, particularly in outlying parts of the San Fernando Valley and South Los Angeles, have begun to soften. Apartment vacancy rates are rising, with property managers offering incentives that were unheard of just a few years ago. For landlords and sellers, the slowdown reflects shrinking demand in a city that once seemed to defy housing market cycles. For buyers and investors, Los Angeles presents a dual narrative. The 3% population decline and tens of thousands leaving each year highlights significant risks. Yet for those with long-term vision, the city still represents one of the most important economic hubs in the world. Discounted properties may offer rare opportunities, but they come with the uncertainty of whether Los Angeles can reverse its downward trend. In 2025, Los Angeles is no longer just a sprawling metropolis. It is also a city where ghost town patterns are emerging across neighborhoods once thought immune to decline. 1. San Francisco. San Francisco, once the crown jewel of Northern California and a global symbol of innovation and culture, now epitomizes what many call the ghost town phenomenon of the 2025 housing crash. The city has endured one of the steepest population declines in the nation, losing nearly 8% of its residents between 2018 and 2023. What is most alarming is not just the scale of the exodus, but the transformation it has brought to the urban fabric. Downtown streets that once teemed with office workers, tourists, and nightlife now echo with silence. More than 52,000 housing units, representing nearly 13% of the city's entire stock, sit vacant. The roots of this decline go back to the pandemic, which radically shifted the dynamics of work and living. When tech companies embraced remote work, tens of thousands of employees realized they no longer needed to live in San Francisco's notoriously expensive housing market. Many chose to relocate to suburban areas, other states, or even abroad. The city, which once thrived on the daily influx of workers into its dense downtown, has struggled to adapt to this new reality. Office vacancy rates have soared to record highs, creating a feedback loop where empty towers contribute to a quieter, less vibrant urban core. Housing prices, once seemingly unstoppable, have followed the population outflow downward. The typical home value in San Francisco has dropped by more than 13% year over year, erasing billions in equity. For homeowners who bought at the peak, the decline has been financially devastating. For investors, the market presents a paradox. While prices are lower than they have been in years, demand is so weak that vacancies remain stubbornly high, making returns uncertain. Luxury high-rises that once symbolized prosperity now stand half-lit at night, their darkened windows a stark reminder of the residents who have left. Quality of life issues have only deepened the crisis. High taxes, visible homelessness, and safety concerns have deterred newcomers, while families who remained during the pandemic are increasingly opting to leave. Public services are strained as the tax base shrinks, and local businesses face dwindling foot traffic. Even world-class cultural attractions and natural beauty have not been enough to offset the perception that San Francisco is in decline. In 2025, San Francisco stands as the most visible ghost town in California's housing crash. A nearly 8% population loss, more than 52,000 empty housing units, and double-digit drops in home values make it a cautionary tale for cities that depend too heavily on a single industry or inflated housing demand. For buyers, it offers unprecedented discounts in one of the nation's most famous cities. But for residents, San Francisco is a sobering reminder of how quickly a world-class metropolis can unravel when costs, policies, and shifting economic trends collide. And that wraps up our countdown of the 15 California cities turning into ghost towns in 2025. But the story doesn't end here. Every decline we talked about is also an opportunity waiting for someone else, a chance to buy in when prices are low, or to watch closely as communities reshape themselves. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you live in any of these cities? Are you seeing the empty storefronts, the price cuts, or the quiet neighborhoods firsthand? Drop your experiences in the comments because your perspective might explain more than any chart or statistic ever could. If you guessed our #1 pick correctly, let us know below. And if you were surprised by any city on this list, tell us which one caught you off guard. Before you go, make sure to hit that like button if you found this breakdown helpful. Subscribe so you never miss future videos on where America's housing market is heading, and share this with a friend who might be thinking about moving. The next shift in the market could happen faster than we expect, and you'll want to be ahead of it.